What's up, everyone? This is Mike coming to you live to our new show called One and Done. And I'm here with Zeke. And yeah, let's just get started. Maybe we can talk a little bit about ourselves and then maybe talk about, how we came up with the name One and Done and kind of what it means and what we're hoping to talk about in this podcast. What do you think?
Yeah, no. One and done is something that me and Mike have talked about doing for quite a while. It's what, like 3-4 months of procrastination.
Yep.
No, we talk a lot about everything when it comes to collecting sports, video games, card games. Like if it's collectible, we've talked about it. We've talked about just a wide variety of things. I like to know a little bit of everything when it comes to the collecting world. Mike knows a lot about certain things that way out categorize things that I know, but I feel like I have a more diverse understanding of certain things, and I feel like we get into so many deep discussions about those things, and sometimes we educate ourselves just by discussing. We'll start looking things up, we'll start reaching out to people just to find out certain things, and we've learned a lot. I feel like me and Mike, we've known each other for quite some time, and I know in the time that I've known you, and then you've known me, we've both learned and have expanded our collecting knowledge by quite a lot. I feel like I was never huge in sports, for example, and like speaking with you, like I'm a huge sports fan, never cared for collecting sports, and in the time that we've learned a lot talking with each other. Now I'm into sports. Now there's certain things that I feel like when I was, years ago, I would have thought were cool to own or whatever. Now it's like things that I'm pursuing. They're on a checklist. And I would say that you feel the same way, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, generally what we're hoping to achieve with One and Done is pretty much cover all the interesting aspects of collecting. Ideally, the stuff that's rare, things that are possibly one and done, but things maybe that aren't necessarily a one and done, but generally hard to find, hard to get. The challenging stuff that a lot of collectors enjoy going after. And that could be anything from card games to sports cards to memorabilia to video games. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things out there to collect, and a lot of it's hard to find. And I think, having content for you guys that can sort of talk into those discussions and break things down, hopefully can help. Teach you all some stuff. Obviously, we've learned a lot through the process. I think with sports cards, it's an interesting one. Kind of like you, I never really thought about getting into that one. I'd say probably what triggered that most recently was Kobe Bryant's death. I think that was a huge sort of it kind of like ignited my interest in getting cards. Obviously, with someone like him passing and having such a huge impact / influence, not just in basketball but in sports in general and even beyond sports, a lot of his stuff just like exploded in demand. Obviously, when you have someone pass away, you really just reach a point where like a lot of that stuff can't be made anymore, right? Like it's always possible to still produce cards for him, but having those cards signed by him like is no longer a thing.
Right. No.
So
And that's a big thing I remember you and I talked about because we were looking at like immediate like we've talked the last several months about sports cards and things that
yeah,
we
I
want.
feel like we talk about sports like in and of itself. Like we'll talk about, hey, did you watch the game, or did you watch the finals, or did you hear about this player doing this? Like in the sports itself, like we talk, but not in the aspect of collecting things.
Not until recently. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Kobe's departure from us definitely changed the way we kind of saw things, because I know we always talked about, like, I'm a huge Rockets fan, and one of my favorite players on in the team's legacy was Yao Ming. While we never won a championship, I'm a huge Yao Ming fan. And you're a Warriors fan, and we always talked about things like that. How you wanted a Steph Curry card, I wanted a Yao Ming jersey, but a game jersey, not just one of those buy jerseys from the website. So like for me, like we've always talked about collecting and purchasing those, but we never were so concentrated or cared. We never had the urgency. We were collecting a lot more into TCGs like Pokemon and Dragon Ball, and I've been collecting in Magic recently. And then Kobe passed, and then it's like we immediately like I've been looking at Kobe rookie cards. You've been looking at not only Kobe but other players as well. Because now you're just like, I feel like we should purchase these now before anything else happens. And then
Yeah, it's crazy.
well, I think what made Kobe's death so impactful is that I can't think of any sports superstar that has passed away that had this impact. And I think the reason why he has this impact is because he died so young. If he would have died like from old age or illness at an older age, like if he would have died in the 60s from cancer, of course, the league would have been heartbroken, fans would have been heartbroken, but we would have seen it coming, and we could say at least he lived a good life, but with this, he just retired, what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago,
Yeah, 2016 season, 2015-2016 season was his final season. So we're talking like 4 years, like
Yeah,
even less than 4 years.
and in
So
4 years, he had an award-winning, sports analyst show. He won an Oscar.
yeah.
The dude was just starting like a whole new life. Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
most people who leave a profession to pursue another profession have the same scaling. It takes them, it took Kobe some time, but we knew he had the potential to become a superstar, and it did. It took him 20 years to create his legacy, and for him to start his second legacy by winning an Oscar and having such a successful TV show off the bat, I can't imagine the amount of success and things he would have been able to accomplish, if he wouldn't have left us so quickly. I mean, in 4 years, he accomplished what people take a lifetime to accomplish. So I think that in itself, and then just like I said, no other sports star has died so suddenly that I think the pressure on you and I to just like for example, you and I realized this very quickly when Kobe died. Let's just buy something to remember him, not buy to resell, not buy to flip or to invest. It was more like, oh, I want to purchase this because while you and I aren't Lakers fans, we respect and appreciate and understand Kobe's legacy in the league. So let's purchase something to, recognize and own a piece of his history. And immediately we noticed, I think we talked about just his Topps rookie card went from, I think, a PSA 10 gem mint was like $200, skyrocketed to $1,600 in 2 days.
Yeah, everything. I mean, it was insane the reaction people had. A lot of the things that you could find, I'd say like tripled in price at least.
Oh, at least
Once the news broke, and then obviously, you had the super rare stuff, grow even bigger. I think it's just been crazy just to see, just how much interest there's just been, and I think you totally nailed it. I think honestly, like part of what caused it was just so unexpected. I mean, he barely lived a life out after his basketball career ended, and just to see him suddenly pass like that, I think it just shook a lot of people, and it also created like this sense of uncertainty, right? Like, okay, now that I know there's a possibility that, even someone famous like him could suddenly pass, what if other players I like suddenly were to pass?
Yeah.
Maybe I should start buying their cards. You never know, right? So I think that kind of created this this fear that maybe other people that I like or other players that I like might pass, and it could even be another sport. It's not even necessarily just basketball. So I think the market just overall just kind of had this huge interest in just buying cards of players that they like, and I kind of had that feeling too, right? Like for me, I'm a big Steph Curry fan, and so yeah, Steph Curry, he's not retired yet, he's still young, probably gonna live a nice life, but hey, I mean, you really never know now, just based on what happened with Kobe. So maybe I should buy a Steph Curry card, right? So
right.
so yeah, so I think it's been insane just to see this kind of reaction to things, and like I said, man, when you have someone pass, at that point, a lot of stuff just becomes it just becomes limited, right?
Right. No.
Kobe won't be able to sign stuff anymore. It just won't happen. So you suddenly have this
Yeah.
whatever supply in the world you had of his signatures, that is no longer infinite because by definition he's no longer here to be able to sign stuff anymore. So I think kind of like that adds pressure to these these collectibles and the demand for it. So it's been crazy just to see how the markets reacted to this whole thing.
I know for you and I, it definitely changed our priorities. Like for example, you and I the last year have been more interested in collecting cards out of the Dragon Ball TCG, and I've been lightly touching Magic the last year. And with Kobe's death, I feel like in the year that we've talked about collecting more aggressively, I feel like we've both agreed that we'll get to sport cards eventually. That was like
Yeah.
we had that conversation like, oh well, it's on the list, but it's like not a priority. Like we'll get to it. And I think now with Kobe's death, it's changed because the thing is like me and Mike have a we collect to collect. We don't collect in terms of like I want to say a majority of our acquisitions are just collector orientated, not investment orientated. Would you agree, Mike, that most of our acquisitions are more
Oh
I just
yeah.
want
I mean, a lot of the times, um, the stuff that I buy is stuff that I actually genuinely like. It's not something that I just look at and I think dollars. I think the kind of mindset you need to have is go after the things that you actually like and feel, tell yourself if it actually does become something valuable later on, that's a nice added benefit, but that shouldn't be the core reason to go after stuff. Like even for me, when I had thought about Curry, it wasn't because I thought, okay, because Curry's going to be a really good player, he's going to be worth a lot. No, it's because I'm actually a fan of the team he plays on. I'm a fan of his style of basketball. I understand the importance of how he plays and how he's changed the game. And it's stuff that I enjoy and I appreciate. And I think sort of having that feeling of going after stuff. I mean, I've like Dragon Ball, obviously a lot of the cards in Dragon Ball don't have a huge resale value over time, but that's okay. Like I'm not afraid to admit that I've bought stuff that have gone down in value, but I enjoy the cards, so I don't really care about the resale value of it. I enjoy it. So
and
definitely, like I've been in that position, and
right.
yeah,
Well, we're more interested in collecting than investing, and I
yeah.
think I
I
think
mean, I
while
feel like you're the same way too, right? I mean,
oh
you
yeah.
go after stuff that you just enjoy.
Oh yeah, 100%. For example, in Magic, I've been buying a card called Surgical Extraction, and the foil version was 100 to 160 for some time, and the card just dropped for two reasons. In terms of playability, it's lost some playability because of the games where it is right now, and it's getting reprinted. It hasn't but I like the art on that card a lot, so I don't really care that it's dropping. I don't really care. I'm happy with what I have. I have no interest in selling to recoup. I just like owning the card, and I think with you and I, the reason why our priorities have changed when it comes to sports is because we're buying to buy and not so much for value. So we also are smart about our acquisitions. We don't want to pay a premium just because and I think that's why our priorities have shifted to more sports because we don't want to pay a premium because somebody's passed away or somebody has an established career now. Like I guarantee you, Curry's rookie card was nothing, close to nothing for a long time until 2015. I'm sure in 2015 is when it started to climb, and probably 2016, 17 is when it just like skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely wasn't following prices back then to know. Obviously, Curry for a lot of people wasn't expected to be what he actually became, so a lot of that was kind of surprising too.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm sure it was a lot cheaper back then.
Oh yeah. And the thing is now with everything like the way it is, I just feel like we should just buy what we like in sports now because a premium might come up that we just don't want to pay. I mean, we'll pay it sometimes if we really want it, but then it just becomes a headache knowing that I could have bought this for 500, 800, 2,000, and now I'm paying 8, 10, 15,000 for the same thing. And me and Mike aren't alien to card values when it comes to things going into five figures. Um, I think we have a diverse enough collection to where we could say that We have things that are 50, $20 and all the way up in the five-figure range. I feel like we're not scared to cross those lines, but we definitely don't want to make a dumb purchase. Like, I'm not gonna pay a ridiculous amount just because somebody's asking a ridiculous amount. I definitely want to be a smart shopper in terms of like, I want this, but I don't want to pay my mortgage into it either. So,
For sure.
yeah, no, I think right now with you and I, sports is definitely a priority now. It's funny because I went into this year heavily like leaving the Dragon Ball card game as a priority and changing my focus to video games. And now I'm kind of like in that tilted where now I got to share the limelight with video games and sports. I've been recently acquiring video games. I like them as trophy pieces to just kind of as almost decoration pieces in my house. I like to display a lot of my collection items on like shelves and bookcases in my house. Hope my cats don't knock them over. But and I know you've talked about buying a display case for your Dragon Ball eventually, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because there's like so many choices out there, and I gotta like figure out, how big do I want it to be, how tall do I want it to be.
Just dedicate
Is
a
it
whole
one of
room.
those display cases that like has sliding doors or like opening doors? Is there like lights inside of it that you could turn on? Like, there's so many options out there for display cases that I haven't really decided
I just have a
which one
bookshelf.
exactly I want. But yeah, I definitely do want to try and get a display case. I think even more than just Dragon Ball at this point. I probably want to use it for all my stuff. But a lot of it would definitely be Dragon Ball stuff.
See, I feel like right now you have a lot of quantity,
I
and,
do. Yeah. It's kind
and
of sad. Like, I have all this stuff, but I don't really display it. It's all just like hidden away in like a bunch of cases, like suitcases.
yeah.
So it is kind of sad. I definitely do want to have some display case to show it off. I just haven't decided which one to use.
See, to me it sucks because once you grade something, and I don't think people realize how much more space it takes up once something's graded. It's dumb because a binder of 360 cards
Yeah,
does
totally.
not compare to the size of 360 graded cards.
Totally.
And
It actually gets like even worse with Beckett, because
oh
Beckett
god,
cases are even wider than PSA cases. PSA is a lot slimmer. So if you have a bunch of Beckett cases, those would take up even more space. So yeah, it definitely does.
yeah. I,
Yeah.
I feel like in the last year I've been ruined. I went through this like almost 10 stages of grief of like denial with grading. Like I remember when we first started talking about grading, I told you that I don't care for it. I think I understand its existence and why it's good and in preservation. I just don't like what grading has created in terms of a secondary market. And then I went to kind of enjoying grading, then preferring Beckett over PSA, and then and like I've gone through this emotional roller coaster the last year and a half, and my end result is, I just fucking hate it now.
So you made a full circle.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you were there when I was like, I want Beckett tens. I just forget PSA. I want.
I remember. Yeah, I remember.
I I, I
You
was
were
so
really consumed with it, actually.
yeah, I was so ambitious about, oh, I want to get this in the Beckett 10, that in the Beckett 10. I got to hunt for this in the Beckett 10. I want this and this. And then as we've learned a lot, um and I think it's really cool cuz we've had a really good opportunity. Pokemon I want to say is what started me kind of changing my opinion about grading with the Black Charizard, because now I completely don't understand grading anymore.
Really,
like
it just totally broke you.
it did, because like I was always under the understanding that PSA specializes in sports, and certain TCGs like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, they're the preferred grading company for sports, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh, and maybe a handful of others that I'm not too familiar with. But those were the three that I always grew up. I mean, I've been involved in TCGs for 16 years now. 16 years. So, and I
I would
always
say
knew.
sports is actually in the middle, because I've actually heard some people say that if it's old sports, it's PSA, because obviously PSA's been around for a lot longer and they've had a history with older sports. But I've actually heard people say for modern sports, Beckett is actually the one that's preferred now. That's what I've heard. I'm still trying to learn this whole world of sports, so I don't really know for sure. But I've
Yeah.
heard people say it's a lot more Beckett oriented for sports cards in like modern generation,
Right.
and PSA for the older stuff. But I do think Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon definitely do have a much larger share of interest in PSA, and Beckett. I'd say Magic is predominantly the one.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball is still brand new, so I think it's still trying to be figured out. It's actually interesting that talking about your cycle, because for me it was a little bit different. Obviously, I started, when I had started getting into Dragon Ball, I had already had a lot of experience with Pokemon and Magic. So for me, I kind of already had this like understanding of the two services and appreciated both of them for what they were. With Dragon Ball, it was kind of like, huh, it's this new world, new card game. Both services graded. Which one should I choose? And I kind of split. I had sent some to PSA, sent some to Beckett, and kind of just like hedged because I really didn't know which one I'd prefer. And over time, I'd say through my growth of Dragon Ball, I've actually gotten less interested in Beckett and swayed more towards PSA, than I had originally. Originally I was so focused on trying to get, the best of the best that I just, I'd send some to PSA, send some to Beckett, hope for the black label. But then I was just like, I think it's a lot easier with PSA, so I'm just going to stick with PSA. And that's kind of been like my mindset now. Like the process for submitting to PSA is so much easier. I mean, their website's a lot more updated. You can do it all digitally. With Beckett, you got to like print out their form. You got to fill it out. You got to do all this stuff. And it's just so much work. And I think for me, PSA is just so convenient, man. It's super, super convenient. And it's also cheaper. So for bulk, it kind of adds up. And like the amount of cards that I'm always sending in is kind of a lot. So yeah, over time, I've actually gotten more interested in PSA. I'd say the only time where I would probably still say Beckett might be better is if it's a metal placer card. Because I just don't really see a metal card sitting very well in a PSA case, whereas with Beckett it's a lot better.
I would agree. I would agree that with metal cards, I think there is a niche with Beckett. And
yeah, that to me would probably be like one of the more ideal cases where you'd want Beckett no matter what, just because of the way their slabs are designed is better for the metal to stay in place.
It's just it's just so weird now. Like just in the year that we've interacted and discussed, things like Beckett and PSA and grading, so much has happened. Like with the shiny Charizard, the black Charizard being the first.
The black Charizard was crazy. I mean, we're talking about a card that, last I heard, has over 100 black labels.
Exactly.
Like, it's insane. Like, the black label, like, the entire idea behind a black label was that there would only be a very, very small, like, handful of them in existence because it's just conceptually hard to find a card perfectly produced, in the world. And so one of the things that's really interesting is that now you have this card whose black label number essentially has surpassed maybe even like non-black labels. I don't know at this point, but it's just so crazy to see how many of them there just are out there now. And then to top it off, you even have ones that have been sent to PSA. For all we know, those could have been black labels too. So it's really hard to tell.
Well, not only that, but like for years, for over a decade, I always was under the understanding that a Beckett 9.5 of any card was more valuable than a PSA 10 of the same card. So, and that's just kind of like my understanding for a long time. And I feel like that's changed a lot lately. Like, I feel like that's no longer the case. There's been a huge reaffirmment in terms of, like, PSAs becoming more strict in their grading.
PSA is definitely, like, I've even noticed it with my own submissions now. Like, PSA has definitely gotten to be a lot harder on their grades than in the past. I'd say, like, the comparison of 9.5 Beckett's to PSA 10s, it's hard because, one of the things that you have to think about is Beckett has subgrades that come up with that 9.5 overall grade, right? So you have to kind of think about, okay, if I'm going to take this 9.5 Beckett and I'm going to compare it to a PSA 10, what were the subgrades that came out of that 9.5, right? I mean, are they quad 9.5s? Is it a 9.5 basic? Like, is it a 9.5 plus? Like, there's so many variations of a 9.5 that you can't necessarily just do a straight comparison to a 10. But if it's something that would be at least a 9.5 or higher in their subgrades, so we're talking about something that would have potentially two 9.5s and two 10s, or like three 9.5s and a 10, or even just four 9.5s, I'd say that's probably where you're going to be more comparable to the PSA 10 because they're both true gem mints. But I think part of it also too, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon because even though the 9.5, like a true 9.5 Beckett, is harder to obtain than a PSA 10 in a lot of ways, collectors just like seeing the number 10. Because I guess it's like a psychological thing. 10 is greater than 9.5. I don't know, but it's just something about that number that a lot of times you'll see the market have
would
more
you say,
interest in the 10.
But let me ask you this though.
Even though you can cross it over, like you could probably grab that 9.5 and then send it to PSA if you really wanted a 10 case on it. Say, hey, cross this over to a 10, and they'll probably do it.
But let me ask you this: a year ago, not today, because I feel like your opinion today is different. But a year ago from now, would you say that a PSA 10 Charizard is worth more than a Beckett 9.5 Charizard, or
which Charizard?
the base set Charizard?
No, the market always values it. You could look it up. I mean, I think there's actually some on eBay right now. You could find a PSA 10 Charizard. I'm assuming you're talking about the first edition one, right?
Yeah,
the original.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, last I heard, the PSA 10 versions have been going for 40 and up. Beckett 9.5s have been going for like half that, if any. There is one. I don't know if it's listed anymore, but I did see someone, ironically from the Magic community, have. When I was talking about those subgrades, it actually had two 9.5s and two 10 subgrades. So we're talking about one subgrade away from a Beckett 10, which only there's two in existence. And Gary owns both of those. That one was going for a lot more. And again, that's why those subgrades matter a lot in the Beckett world. I think that one he was trying to ask like 50 or 60. But generally speaking, if the subgrades are 9.5, it's not going to be as much as a PSA 10.
So just to make sure, so I'm looking right now. A PSA 10 first ed,
yeah,
is buy it now for $36,995. No, or $999. Okay. So 37,000. And there's a PSA 7 for 15,000. And then you have Gary with his.
That sounds like a stretch. Because last I saw PSA 9 would go for like 5 to 6.
Well, that's just what some. Oh no, it's autographed. That's why it has the artist.
Yeah. There's probably something extra to it then.
Yeah, that's probably that's what it is. That's why it's $15,000. Then you have Gary with his hundreds of Charizards for $3 million.
So interesting. So the guy actually, the 36, because the 36 even to me sound a little bit low. I found the listing, and he actually says in his description that the card has some flaws despite being graded gem mint, sold as is. So I would even argue that it's only because it's a weaker 10 that it's going for this much. But if it wasn't, then it should be in the 40 range. It's crazy actually. It jumps from 36 to 74. So yeah, I'd say 40 plus makes sense if it's like a good enough PSA 10.
Well, yeah, because you have a 9.5 that's listed for 42,000, 43.
Yeah, let's look at the 9.5. What are the subgrades on that? So you got, it's got a 10 centering.
It's a weird 9. It's a hard 9.5. I wouldn't say it's a great because it has a 10, a 9, and then two 9.5. So it's really weird.
Yeah. It's not the best example. Let's see if that true 9. Yeah, here's a quad 9.5. His is asking for 40. So this seller is valuing the quad 9.5 as essentially a PSA 10.
Would you?
Not on this particular. I'm not a fan of the centering. I actually don't think this is a 9.5 centering.
So one of the things I think is also weird is that I think you and I take age of grade into huge consideration. If something was graded a long time ago, I
So here's
val-
another one, by the way, another
Mhm.
9.5 Beckett for 24,000, which is around half the price of the PSA 10. So this is kind of like the one I was more talking about some more. Um, yeah. So what were you saying?
But what I'm saying is, do you believe? So, or sorry, I think there's a clear understanding, and like at least to me there is, that things that were graded a long time ago, I'm a little bit more picky on than things that were graded more recently, because I feel like things that were graded a long time ago, the quality check wasn't as strong as it is now. I feel like.
I think that's a valid point. And so what I try and like tell people, and I try not to fall for this myself, but sometimes it's really hard, is at the end of the day, what you really want to make sure you're doing is you're buying the card, not the label. And I think the way you want to think about this is the label should be kind of like a guidance, kind of like a starting point. When you first look at the card, you look at the label to get a sense of what it is you would expect based on the grade you see. But really what you want to do is look past the grade and actually evaluate the card yourself and ask yourself, do you actually think this is worth the price it's worth? Does it reflect what you personally feel like would be the score that it got? And I think that can kind of make sure that you avoid those situations where, it was, graded early on, so the standards were a little bit different, so they may have missed a few flaws. If you kind of use the grading as a starting point, not as, you know, the final say, I think that can kind of help make sure that you don't fall for buying something that really doesn't reflect what you believe. Because I'm sure, just like the 36,000 one, right? I'm sure there are cases out there where you'll find, graded cards that probably shouldn't have gone that grade. Either they missed it or it was just early on, so the standards were different, whatever the reason is. That's why it's on you as a collector to make sure that you don't just obsess about the grade, but you also focus on the cards. I mean, you essentially also want to be a grader, kind of, right? Like you
Well,
want to like look at the card and make sure that it passes your requirements before you buy it.
right. And this is where I feel like I've learned I've come to hate grading is because I became so obsessed with finding the rarest of the rare. I realized that I put an artificial value and desire in the hands of somebody who doesn't appreciate or understand something as well as I do. And you and I have come across that this year. We have seen black label Beckett's with print lines. We've seen PSA 10s with print lines. We've seen gold 10 Beckett cards that have drastically bad centering and or
Yeah,
definitely like
which is
like
why like I think you cannot only use the grade as the reason to buy something, because then you're gonna have the situation where you get it in the mail, you look at it and you're like, huh, man, should I have paid this much for this? Because yeah, it does say 10 on it, but it
right.
actually has this issue or this issue or this issue,
Eh,
and
eh,
that'll
eh,
just like get at you. And
Right.
you
Well,
know,
right, because we feel like we could have just bought a raw at a much. I don't like the feeling of paying a premium for a 10 and then finding out that the 10 is not really a 10 in my opinion.
yeah,
And,
and I think that's but I mean, at the end of the day, these are just opinions given by employees at a company.
but people pay a
So
lot for those opinions apparently, and I can personally say in my experience, I no longer validate the opinion of PSA or Beckett.
well,
I
what if it's one that you look at and you see it's a 10, but actually also looks like a 10, because once you look at it yourself, you don't really see any issues with it either. Would that
I
change your opinion?
I think I think for me at this point, I I've come to the conclusion that in my if the premium between a raw and a PSA 10 slash Beckett 10 isn't too significant. Like obviously, usually it's double, quadruple, sometimes 10 times more a raw versus a PSA 10 based on what the card is. Like for example, like a raw 10 or a raw, Japanese Gold Star Umbreon and a PSA 10 Umbreon. The premium isn't that much more. I think it's like 25 to 30% more because the card is so stupid rare that the grade is just like a cherry on top. Then I don't mind buying a PSA 10 of that if I can see it in person before purchasing and and then realizing like, oh yes, this is a 10. I feel like this is a 10.
Well, my question, well, because you had said that it bothers you. My question is, would it bother you less if the grade you're looking at also looks to be accurate based on your personal evaluation of the card?
Yes, but that eliminates online purchases completely.
I guess. I mean, part of it is like trying to like take a guess based on the pictures you see. Do you see damage? Do you see print lines and all that? I mean, you could always also try and ask the seller, but the seller might not want to tell you, or they might not see it.
I mean, I mean, you yourself are guilty of this though, where you were willing to pay a premium and or travel expense of either driving or flying to look at the graded card before purchasing it.
Yeah,
because and I feel like 99% of collectors feel this way. If you have the opportunity where the premium is very reasonable, like an extra couple $100 or a car ride away, to visually see the card before purchasing it, especially if it's graded, everybody would take it. Because you always, like we all subconsciously know that grading's an opinion. We all know that there's been mistakes made, and of course, if I can see it before purchasing in person, I will always jump at that opportunity. This is why I feel like grading to me now, if I purchase a graded card, I definitely want to see it in person before, or if I'm buying it online or from somebody through forums, the premium difference between the raw and the PSA 10 shouldn't be too much. And again, every card is unique. Like, for example, the Kobe Bryant rookie card, the non-chrome, it was $40-$80 non-graded, and then it was 200 to 300 PSA 10. And this is before Kobe passed away. And I was okay with paying the premium of $200-$300, which was quadruple the price of the raw, because at least I knew, even though the card may not be a true PSA 10, I know that it's a high grade, it's a high condition card, and I know that it's preserved. So I felt comfortable with the idea of buying a PSA 10 Kobe card, a Kobe non-chrome Topps card, because I understood that while it may not be a PSA 10, it's definitely a high condition and it's preserved. And the premium price difference to me being, 300 to 400% didn't bother me, because outside of the...
Well, I think part of that premium there's multiple factors, but I have to assume part of it's age. Like, that has to be one of the factors. Like, a raw Charizard versus a PSA 10 Charizard. Definitely that percentage has to be a lot bigger, because it's just so insanely hard to find any of them today. Like, that's not... Like, I have to assume age has partly... I mean, that Topps one is like, what, 95, 96? So you're talking about more than 20 years old.
Right.
So.
And you're right. And that's where, like, I take all those things into consideration. I feel like
you have to.
Right. And there's only a handful of cards that fall into that category. Charizard is a perfect example, where a raw first edition that looks near mint sell for anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 raw, and it's hard because a PSA 10 is so much more. You know what I mean?
They just command it. I think some cards are always just going to command that, like, unusual premium that you normally don't see. And I think multiple factors, definitely age one of them, popularity one of them, difficulty obtaining. And I think part of it too is, like, how easy is it to obtain one in mint today and grade it yourself? Normally, when that's really hard to do, the 10's going to command that premium. A lot of the stuff in Dragon Ball that you see come out today you're not going to be able to send it to PSA to get it back as a 10 and then try and sell it for like 10 extra premium, because it's not that hard for someone else to find one in mint condition and grade it themselves, because it's modern product. There's a lot of it out there. It's readily available. Like, how hard is it for you to go to the store and say, hey, I want to buy a first edition booster pack? Like, you just, like, that just doesn't exist anymore. So having one in mint condition is definitely going to drive the premium versus, not having one. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to like graded premiums, especially high graded premiums versus non-graded or lower grade premiums, is going to be how hard is it for someone to just go and do it themselves. And if that answer is it's really, really hard, then you got to expect that the grading premium will definitely be up there.
Right. Well, that's why I personally, now I've made the personal executive decision of if I'm gonna buy a graded card and pay a premium for a graded card, like for example, let's say a Charizard versus a Raw, I have to make the purchase in person. I will no longer like cards that fetch such
Really? So, what would it depend? I guess it also depends on like here's another example. It's an extreme example, but technically still an example. An Alpha Lotus in like crazy crappy condition. We're talking about played as hell, you know, has seen a lot of, damage. Probably still goes for 5 figures. But is that still something you'd want to like kind of see in person, or it's just one of those, it's so incredibly rare to have an Alpha Lotus because we all know there's only 1100 printed, that I actually wouldn't need to see it in person because I know it's so crazy rare that I'll have to just pay what they're asking and get it.
I don't know. I mean
Charizard's not there yet, I'd say, with the Lotus status, but
no,
you know what I mean. I think there are some cases.
I feel like the thing that sucks about Black Lotus is all right. So right now today it's February 17th, 2020. If I type in Charizard First Edition Shadowless Base, like no grade,
Yeah.
there's 21 listings on eBay, and like about a handful of them aren't even related to Charizard. So about half of them aren't even. So there's less than like 10 legit First Edition Charizards you can buy, regardless of grade, regardless of raw or anything. There's less than 10 to buy. Yet with Black Lotus, with an Alpha Black Lotus, I believe I can buy a lot more, or there's more available. Maybe not graded, but the raws, I feel like.
Really?
I
would imagine there'd be a lot. I mean, the Alpha Lotus, like there's just not that many to begin with. Like, how would there be more available to buy? You mean, are we talking raw though, or graded as well?
Raw and graded, like both populations available to purchase.
I mean, I guess it's tough too, because like you would have to assume both of these cards are just so iconic that whoever owns it more than likely would have graded it, right?
So
what's the point of owning one of these things and not having it graded, not having it preserved? It's weird.
Alpha Lotuses,
yeah,
I agree. I agree. Beta and Unlimited are different. I mean,
no, yeah. Once you get into the subsequent sets, it's totally different. But talking strictly first edition Alpha, since they're kind of similar as being the first for their respective games, it's just weird to me. Like, you'd own one but not have it graded. Like, if anything, at least have it be authenticated, so that way you can at least keep it preserved. But just having it in its original form in some binder or in some sleeve, who knows what can happen with it. So it's weird to me that you'd see more Lotuses.
Right, and I feel like if money wasn't an issue, if money wasn't an issue, I feel like I could like if you're already paying such a ridiculous premium, think about it. You're paying, like right now, there's an unlimited, just an unlimited 9.5, a hard 9.5, because it has two 9.5s, a 10 on 110 and a 9, and somebody's asking 140,000 for it right now for unlimited, which is like the worst of the three variations of it. You know what I mean? If you're paying such a high premium to buy this card, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to fly or to go to the place to visually look. I mean, if you're paying so much money already for this card, I would pay the extra. I mean, first off, for with everything that's happened in the last couple of years with high value items going missing, even with insurance and everything, I personally would want
True. That is a good point. Yeah.
if I'm already paying a hundred six figure range, even in the five figure range. Once you go into the five figure range, I feel like if my cost to travel is almost the same as the insurance, because by the way, to insure $50,000, it's almost like $500 at the post office. You can fly round trip most places in the U.S. for less than that. Like this week, I'm flying to Vegas round trip for $88. So, not saying that all flights are like that, but I'm just saying like once you're going into those territories of like mid. If I have the opportunity to, I'm not saying that everybody's like this or everybody cares, because like if I'm buying from Rudy from Alpha Investments or Scott or from you, Mike, of course I'll take your word for it, because I feel like they understand the collecting hobby to a master's level, and you know what I'm looking for on top of that. So I feel like I would feel more comfortable purchasing from them. Again, just because of all the issues on shipping that's happened. We had over $250,000 worth of vintage cartridges go missing in a shipment from the UK to New York. That's a $250,000 worth of vintage.
I think you make a good point. I think, but here's the part. If you're doing the traveling because of risk with shipping, I think that's a good call, especially when you're pushing five figures and up. But if it's just to verify condition, I'd say it kind of depends on the card. Like if I'm gonna get an Alpha Lotus, I probably wouldn't be traveling to verify the condition, because the thing is just so incredibly rare. I'd probably just be like, okay, I probably will just go with what it says. But if it's like something, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I think if you're buying an Alpha Lotus for $100,000
or more,
or more, like it's not that much harder to just get in a plane and go get it yourself.
right?
So.
And then on top of that, what if I mean, I think Alpha Lotuses are kind of special, but like any other card that's 50K plus, I feel like it doesn't hurt to spend a couple $100, maybe up to $1,000 if you're flying international, because that's how much it'd be to ship international with insurance. It'd be $1,000. I don't think it's. I personally feel, and I know you would agree that.
But I mean, even with insurance, like let's say hypothetically you get the insurance on this, how easy of a process is it for the post office to like shell out $100K?
They don't.
I'm pretty sure you'd have to jump through a shit ton of hoops.
Well,
have to go through like this huge bureaucratic process to try and get your money.
So a little bit of insight. If you're shipping national, only for U.S. people listeners, if you're shipping in the U.S. to U.S., the highest insurance policy you can get is $50,000. There is no.
This is the post office, though, right? I'd assume FedEx or UPS or something.
I think with UPS and FedEx, it's also capped at 50,000. I think it's like across the board. I'm gonna speak for USPS only, but I'm pretty sure with FedEx and UPS, it's also 50,000. That being said, if you're shipping anything over 50,000 already, or purchasing anything over 50,000. I get it. Like it's rare. It's a fraction of a percent, or that it's gonna go missing. But when you're buying cards that are 1 of 9, 1 of 5, 1 of 1s, personally, with the experience that Mike, we've suffered this. When we made an acquisition of a 1 in 15 at the time, it went missing. You know what I mean? Like something like it happens, and then it happened with a Pokemon Placer that was valued at $70,000 plus. So much has happened. At least in my personal experience, I just feel like once you get to a certain point, I just know that at a national level, the maximum insurance you can get is 50,000, and if you're shipping something that's worth over 50,000, you really have to reconsider, a lot of things. And on top of that, if you're buying just to buy, back to the original question, if you're buying just to buy the card and you don't care for the grade, if I have to buy the graded version and I have to pay the graded premium, and I'm already in that price range, I might as well go and take the trip and have a peace of mind. Because I would hate to spend 50 plus $1,000 and know that I could have bought the, the thing that I bought I'm not happy with, and I know that I could have bought somebody else's for the same price and I could have been happy with it. And that's just me. So some people don't care a damn. They just care that it says 10 Charizard, 10 whatever card it is. They see some people don't even care that it's not a true PSA 10 or a true Becca 10. Some people don't even care. The label to them is more valuable than the card, or it's equally as valuable as the thing inside the case. And I think everybody's unique, and I think that's fine. I think it's fine that people can have that desire. It's just in my experience with everything, I've come to just now feel very disdained with grading, and that's just how I feel. Like I said, the Umbreon, for example, I think the Gold Star Umbreon raw is like $5 to $8 grand, and the PSA 10 is like $12 to $15 grand. So to me, buying a PSA 10 is worth it because I'm getting a high condition, maybe not a true PSA 10 Gold Star Umbreon, but I know I'm getting a high condition Umbreon. There's not that many in existence, even in raw, and now it's in perfect preservation. So for me, paying the premium, which is double to triple the price, I'm okay with that, even if I'm buying it online. And again, that's under 50,000. I can insure the item to make sure that if it goes missing, while it would suck, at least I'm guaranteed my money to come back, for my purchase. So things like that, I would feel comfortable buying a PSA 10 of. But once we start going into like Lotus territory, Power 9, certain rookie cards, I mean, gosh darn, we were looking at Patrick Mahomes rookie cards a couple weeks ago, and they're all and there's some that are like what, $250,000. Right?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and like people are listening, they're like, $250,000. The dude, his rookie card was $250,000 before he won the Super Bowl, before he went into the playoffs. Me and Mike were looking at Lamar Jackson's and Mahomes' rookie card before they even went into the playoff season this year, and they were fetching ridiculous premiums. Like, it was mind-numbing. And
dude, sports is crazy, man. I'm still learning how things work there, but it's just the prices and market of sports is just so different than other TCGs. I remember at first when I saw like the Mahomes, rookie patch, there's like 99 copies. I thought to myself, 99 copies, that kind of sounds like a lot. But then you'd see like 99, even with that, they're like $30,000. And I'm like, how is that possible? Like, you have things in Pokemon that for sure there are less than 99 copies produced of it, but you don't see them jump to $30,000 in like a couple of years, right? Because Mahomes has been in
3 years
since
3 years.
3 years. Yeah. So it's just, sports is just so different. It's just how that world works. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but it's just totally different than traditional card games for sure. Let's keep this going for the next episode. Thanks again, everyone, for listening into our first one. Would love to hear your thoughts, what you guys enjoyed, didn't enjoy. If there's anything you want us to talk about specifically, feel free to drop a note in the comment section, and we'll do our best to talk about it. All right. Thanks again, Zeke, for joining.
100%.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.